Hey, everybody, welcome back to Sober Fit Life. If you have ever told yourself that a drink helps you fall asleep, this episode of Sober Fit Life is going to challenge that belief in a big way. The truth is, alcohol and real restorative sleep do not mix. This conversation might change what you think about alcohol and sleep for good. I am so thrilled to be joined by Mollie Eastman, creator of Sleep is a Skill and the Sleep is a Skill podcast. After struggling with severe insomnia while traveling internationally, she realized that sleep isn't just something that happens. It's a skill you can learn, optimize, and protect. Molly blends behavioral science, wearable tech, and circadian rhythm research to help people transform their nights and their days. She's been featured on over 150 podcasts, writes a popular weekly sleep newsletter, which I highly recommend getting, and partners with top wellness and lifestyle brands. In this episode, we're going to unpack how alcohol disrupts your body's natural sleep systems, why sedation isn't real sleep, how drinking throws off your internal clock, and what you can do instead to train your body to sleep well, naturally, and substance free. So, with all that, welcome Molly to Sober Fit Life.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen, for having me. And we're praying to the technology gods that that everything fares nicely. I know we had a delightful round one with
Right.
our recording. And so I'm excited to be able to bring in even more
Yes.
information together and just, jive on this topic that I know we're both very passionate about, and it could really be summed up in a potentially for some people controversial sentence in that I would take a strong stand that one of the lowest hanging fruits that you could bring in to support your sleep is to reduce or eliminate alcohol. And it's just so clear, even going against societal norms and
Hmm.
all of these things that are present. What we see in the research, wearable data, and of course, subjectively, is just it wildly impacts our sleep results. So we'll get into all that, but excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. But first, I'd love for you to share your story, the
Sure.
severe insomnia that brought you to doing
Yes.
what you do, and then also how your journey with alcohol has changed over time with all you've learned about sleep.
Oh, totally. Yes. And I hope that this could potentially speak to anyone that maybe is dealing with insomnia, which I really like to encourage people to, if they hear that word, to start like removing it from their vocabulary from a identity perspective, because that's one thing that I did. I held it as a identity piece. And the truth is, it's really just a label for that right now you're having some difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, but I want to help support that we have it as just like a current snapshot in time right
Mhm.
now of how you're relating to your sleep. But it doesn't have to be a life sentence. It doesn't have to be a part of your personality, DNA, any of these things. But
Love
how,
that.
right? And so the reason I say that is hard one, because I went through my own period of insomnia about a decade ago while traveling internationally, and it changed the course of my life so much so that I started this company. But what it looked like was I was traveling internationally with my husband, on the heels of tons of stress. We were entrepreneurs out of New York. So night after night, I couldn't sleep. And at first, I thought maybe is this jet lag, and I was so stressed again. So it was starting to. I knew that I was running on this kind of revved up state, and yet night after night, can't sleep, can't sleep. I start going down rabbit holes of searching and forums and just things you really don't want to do when you're dealing with some of these things. And so I start learning about these things, this idea called certainly insomnia, but also sleep anxiety. And now I'm
Mm.
starting to have multiple labels. Now, oh no, now I have insomnia. Now I have sleep anxiety. What do I do? Because now I'm fixating on my sleep. And I was doing everything in retrospect not to do when you are struggling with your sleep. And I'm certainly happy to share some of those things if supportive. But I didn't know. So I was trying to compensate and was sleeping in at all odd hours and all these things. So eventually I go to the doctors, and because we're traveling and we happen to be in this little clinic in Croatia, I leave with sleeping pills. I had to bring like translate and what have you. And I leave with sleeping pills. And in that moment, it was a real sort of kind of wake up call, no pun intended, because the fear for me was that I come from a family with a lot of mental health issues and heavy pharmaceutical use. And also, many of them had had different like bouts with sleep issues. So for me, it was like, oh no, is this the moment I'm going to
Mhm.
be destined for a similar fate? So the fire was lit within me to figure this out. And so, dove down the rabbit hole. I'm certainly an obsessive personality, for better or for worse. Now, on the right side, it's part of what got me into that
Yeah.
situation, the overthinking, the rumination, the whatever. But thankfully, it also helped be kind of this catalyst out of this problem. And so what I discovered changed the course of my life, got me back to sleeping, but then also so fascinated me that I started this company, Sleep is a Skill. I felt, just an immense empathy and like fear, not fear, but concern for people when they are dealing with this, because I know what it feels like and how, debilitating it can be. And so it kind of had started organically. The same forums that I had been on, I was starting to then aim to support people with what I was discovering. And then, Sleep is a Skill was born. And over time, today, now we have one of the top sleep podcasts, interviewed, over 250 experts in the world of sleep optimization in various capacities. We do have that newsletter that you spoke to that's been running for almost 7 years every Monday. We never miss a Monday. Would love to have anyone listening on there. I really get a lot of joy out of that, and I still respond to every single email. It takes me some time sometimes, but I will get back to everyone, at least for right now, that we're still able to do that. And so then we also have online courses. We have audits. So we do a lot with wearable data. So we can audit your wearable data. And in alignment with that, we have one of the largest Oura Ring databases from a sleep optimization perspective. So that helps us really understand a lot on the ground, like on a granular level, of what are some of these things that can make a difference for people with their sleep. And I can certainly tell you, alcohol is one of the clearest things, and we'll get into that. And so we can see the measurable shifts in alignment with that subjective experience for people with their sleep. And lastly, we work with all different types of people that are struggling with their sleep, but I would say we do have a kind of niche in working with people like entrepreneurs or people that can make their own schedules, but then also particularly with high stakes poker players. And I just
Yeah.
mentioned them because they're a great example, because they are often in environments designed on purpose to confuse the circadian rhythm. These casinos that have no windows, no clocks, lots of stimuli, lots of blue light, lots of excitement.
Mhm.
And so on the other side of that, there can be, of course, a lot of sleep disturbances. And yet, if we can make a difference with that sort of group, we can absolutely make a difference with anyone listening. And
Yeah,
that
let's stay there for a minute because you
Yeah,
said something to me
please.
that was so interesting that we are
Sure.
not living lives that are too far off from these
You
professional
nailed it.
poker players. So,
You nailed it.
when
Yeah.
you said that to me, that helped me visualize, she's right. So could you share that a little bit, how we're actually
Yeah,
living
I'm
like
glad you
that?
said that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm so glad you said that, because actually I'm working on a book right now, and that's kind of some of the parallels that I'm drawing is with these poker players, because it can sound like, oh, geez, that's not me.
right.
But what we would argue is, for a couple reasons, we might be closer than we realize. So one, I often share this study that was done in 2001, where the EPA found that the average American was spending well over 90% of their days indoors.
Mm,
And that was in 2001, before Netflix, before, our smartphones, all the fun things, our, work from home revolution, all these things have brought us more indoors.
mm,
And so as a result, we're really disconnected from these rhythms of nature, not to mention, our smartphones and our screens and all of these gadgets are really designed in a slot machine like, method to have that kind of dosing process of that dopamine hit.
yes,
We did one of our more popular podcasts was with Dr. Anna Lemke out of Stanford, who wrote Dopamine Nation. She was also on Andrew
yes.
Huberman's podcast. And so we're really grateful to have her on the podcast. And spoke to some of this kind of dopamine reward system that many of us are kind of linked up with now in our indoor environments, including our tech and what have you.
Mhm.
And so many of us are kind of synced up with this problem of being disconnected from the rising and the setting of the sun, which when we think about our circadian rhythm, that's really in essence what it is. It's this alignment with the rising and setting of the sun, which circa meaning around, so
Okay.
around 24 hours. So in the past, it was kind of hard to get away from that when you lived largely outside. And so, when we think about sleep, there's a great book called Mapping the Darkness, and it's a newer book, and it's really all about the history of sleep as a medicine, as a discipline. And it really identifies that it wasn't thought of as much of an area of science and study
Hmm.
until the Industrial Revolution, until we started going indoors.
Right.
Right. And so the same rules apply with our casino. Analogy is that when we have just that dosing of blue light, that dosing of stimuli, that disconnection from these very clear diurnal rhythms, which is what
Hmm.
we are meant to be, diurnal creatures. We are meant to be active by day and at rest at night. And when we throw those things off, like in my example, I had absolutely thrown that off because I was trending as much more of a very justified and righteous night owl, but
Hmm.
extreme night owl. And I would say, oh, I get my best work done at
Right.
night,
I've
and
heard that.
all these things, right? And so part of what it took to restore my sleep was to align with these rhythms of nature, but also bring in this level of consistency, because sleep loves consistency and it doesn't like that variable, slot machine kind of ups and downs and all arounds.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on. So sleep as a skill is designed to help support us to build the skill set of sleep. And the last thing I want to say about that is it's never meant to be about perfection, because we know that sleep and perfection don't often go well together. Because that kind of pressure with our sleep is never a great
Right.
bedfellow for for sleep. So instead, and also knowing that we're all going to have some rough patches or struggles or what have you, myself included, and yet it's all about having those tools and resources to, with velocity, get back on track. And I
Mm.
think that's the missing in our society, is that this is something we do a third of our lives on average. 26 years are spent
Right.
asleep, and yet the average doctor, even out of Harvard Med, gets about 2 hours of training in this
Mm.
area. So there's a real mismatch in our education, our know-how, our ability to support people when things are not working, and also to illuminate for the people that are may be listening and saying, I'm not like that woman, I don't have problems like that. Well,
Right.
we also want to support just optimizing, like,
Optimizing.
we might,
Preventative.
yeah,
Getting
exactly.
better.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So that's what we can really dive into today, and certainly the work you do is so crucial for this, because it's one of the clearest hits that I see day after day for people with their sleep is alcohol.
Yeah, so I love how you said it's the low hanging fruit. It's something you
Yeah.
can change and affect, and I work with people to help them how to do that. Um,
Yes.
Over time, I'm imagining as you learned all this about sleep, like I did when I learned everything about alcohol and how it affected brain chemistry, I couldn't unsee what I had seen and unlearned what I had learned. And that's why I no longer drink. And I'm
Yes.
imagining for you, you kind of went on
Same.
this journey. Can you share that a bit? And
Yes.
specifically with all you're learning about sleep and alcohol?
Yes, and sorry, I know you, asked that question too,
That's
and
okay.
I didn't quite answer it, so
That's
thank
why
you
I'm
for
here.
keeping us on track. So so one, yes, this was a big part of my journey for sure, and what you said too is like, it's essentially when we know better, we can do better, and one of the things that I love so much about wearable data is that it really
Yeah.
makes this argument for us so clearly. Sometimes it's harder to see some of the connections of some of the other things that we can talk about, the light dark, or
Mhm.
whatever direction we go in. But light dark, exercise timing, meal timing, drug timing, like supplements, our thoughts, so thought patterns and timing, all these things. Sometimes it can get harder to understand, well, what's coming from where. But alcohol is one of the
It's
things
clear.
that is clear.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I remember when years back, when we're first starting to bring in with everyone and really kind of having most people wear different wearable trackers. I remember one client, she had gone wine tasting, and so she didn't start our call about that, but it was immediately, I was like, so tell me what happened, what's going on, because you could see, and she was literally over in Sweden of all places,
Mm.
but it's just a wonderful example of just how across the world,
Yes.
because of these metrics, we can know that someone was engaging in something that was markedly throwing off their ability to recover. And really, this is what these metrics are about. Sleep is a metric of recovery. Certainly, some of these more nervous system indicators. When we look at things like heart rate variability,
Mhm.
heart rate, readiness, or readiness is with Aura Ring, but all of the readiness indicators. So looking at respiratory rate, body temperature, oxygen, blood oxygen levels, etc. All of these can wildly be impacted by even just, I'm talking like a drink, two drinks. Now, I will
Yes.
say some people are more sensitive than others,
Mhm.
and there is
There's
some
a lot of
strategy that you can.
variables
There's
there
a lot of
too. Right.
variables, certainly. And so there can be some things people always say, well, how can I drink? Like, what can I do? Can I
Mhm.
take some sort of supplement? Can I change the time? There are little things, but I can tell you almost always we're going to see that really show up. And especially if you start going over like one drink or two drinks. And we're talking like a tremendous, shift in how you're managing these things to even reduce to get to some sort of livable level. So meaning you're gonna really need to like have that be a boozy brunch or something to pushing back so egregiously early.
Yeah.
And then of course
That's
we have a
another
whole
issue.
and that's another issue. We're going to have a whole spillover of other things. Like,
Right.
why were we going to that? Was that presumably for many of us to help with stress reduction? But then we got a whole spillover on the autonomic nervous system as a result, as we're processing these things, and then dealing with blood sugar instabilities, which further can aggravate the nervous system.
Mhm.
And then, of course, sleep. So it's really an unavoidable piece. You might be trying to work within these small kind of the domain of how can I still get by. But the truth is, if you're really committed to health and well-being
Yeah.
and to feeling good, time and time again, it's really going to be part of it. So to answer your question about my own story, um, this was a big transition for me
Mhm.
because I, for so long, and as someone that has skewed and thought of myself as, type A, anxious, overthinking, for so long, to relax
Right.
equaled a drink, you
Yeah.
know? So that was really part of the journey for a long time. And then it became, longer stretches in between, but still a piece of that lifestyle that to truly connect with others, to meet up with a group,
Mhm.
to be off or something meant a drink. And
Or
eventually, then the
more.
cognitive, right,
Mhm.
exactly. And then the cognitive dissonance became so great
Yes.
that you just really couldn't justify. And also, not even just from like a, some sort of like I should, it became I don't want to, because you start to feel how greatly this will impact you and will take you out for the subsequent day. And even for
Yes.
me, it would take me out really pretty shortly thereafter. I'm quite sensitive, so I would get headaches like later that night.
Mhm.
Certainly start having sleep fragmentation, and this is not uncommon for many people, but I'm
Right.
especially sensitive. I would deal with temperature fluctuations, so the thermoregulation piece would get thrown off, so I get so
Mhm.
hot.
Me
And
too.
so then, right. And so then throughout the REM stage of my sleep in particular, so that second half of the night, often I'm waking up all over the place. And now I'm way more anxious than maybe I was for the reason for drinking the drink before. So over time, it became just a natural thing to take out of the rhythm of my lifestyle and really getting to see that, oh, it's possible to not only be with people without this, but to actually thrive without this, to feel better with us and not to feel like a victim of, because
Yes.
there would be times where eventually I'd be like, this juxtaposition of I want to be social, I want to go out with people, but I don't want to feel awful thereafter, and kind of almost be like I had to, which makes no sense. So
But
to
we're
remove
we're
that was big.
conditioned to think that, so it makes sense that you've thought and felt that. I did too, but much like
Right.
sleep is a skill that you practice and you learn and you're curious and you experiment, same thing, learning how to live an alcohol-free lifestyle is a skill, and so you have to
Yes.
rewire your brain. How do you socialize without it? How do you get to sleep without it? And
Yeah.
that is one thing when people are taking a break with me, I try to encourage them to work on their morning routines as well as their nighttime. So what would you say to someone that would help optimize this time when they're taking a break? That's what I do
Yeah.
with people. And then how can they optimize their sleep? And at first they struggle because they were using alcohol to sleep.
Totally. And I want to do a couple things with that. So,
Yeah,
one, I want to empathize because I can tell you when I went through my period of insomnia, alcohol was one of the things that I went to
right,
in a desperation, right? So, part of the story was that we were overseas. And so we're in Europe. And in Europe, you can't just go to any sort of pharmacy and buy all the things for better or for worse that you can buy in the United States of all these over the counter sleep aids that I might have done as some sort of band aid or even just like a placebo effect, even to
right.
have that component that wasn't there. So that felt even more like a lack of familiarity. And now, like, I have less external support because I didn't have the trust in myself and my own abilities to sleep, which is a whole other thing. Um, so in desperation, then at different points, I'm like, well, maybe a drink, a nightcap, as they say. And there was a couple, a stretch where then it would get me to sleep. And so
Hmm.
then I'd be in this really bad loop of, well, now I guess I got to keep having this,
Right.
on a routine basis. I mean, it was just grasping at straws, to try to make this work. And yet I'm waking up and now my sleep duration is a mess. But, it felt like to have that sleep onset it felt initially like, okay, maybe this is a band aid.
Right.
And I'll share that because we do have research to support, to validate people's experience that alcohol does seem to commonly help with sleep onset to a certain extent. So that's a sleep latency period. So the amount of time it takes you to fall asleep does seem to be to a small extent reduced for some individuals in different pieces of research. That's about where all the benefits end.
But isn't that more
And
sedation though
of
than
course.
sleep? Yeah,
Yes, you are right. Yes.
yeah.
And because, it's because so many people would be like, well, that's nice about you, but I'm telling you, it helps me fall asleep, whatever. And so, not to discount. And yet, one, often we see that in kind of the short term. And if we kind of keep going with this, then you might need to have a higher dosage. And the same thing, the same rules apply with sleeping pills and the
Sure.
same problems that we get ourselves in when anytime we start depending on something external for our sleep wake cycle. This is part of what we see.
Mm,
And so not only, to your point, not only do we, now that we're asleep, quote unquote, but now the quality of that
yes.
sleep is very much impaired. And what does that look like physiologically? Commonly what we'll see is heart rate going markedly up while you're sleeping, temperature going markedly up while we're sleeping,
Mm,
respiratory rate, so the numbers of breaths that you're taking per minute while you're sleeping going up. And if you think about, kind of what it's like to feel at ease even by day, it's usually we want to be breathing
right.
slower and calm and, lowering the amounts of breaths we're taking per minute, not upping that. Same rules apply while we're sleeping. So
Yeah.
we don't want to see that respiratory rate going up from our baseline. And then HRV, heart rate variability, which is a very sensitive metric and can give us a really nice kind of proxy of the nervous system to a certain extent. It's like one of the few metrics that we can look to with such, on a granular scale to see that our nervous system is struggling to recover.
Hmm.
And that can really get markedly hit. And that's all within the time when you are now, quote unquote, asleep. But to your point, it's more of the sedated sleep. What else does this do? Well, on the first half of our night, largely this is more of a time for deep sleep and some of the processes that go about in deep sleep started to come more into conversation back because in 2012 we discovered this process called glymphatic drainage with a G versus lymphatic
Okay.
drainage with an L. Yep, and so glymphatic drainage with a G is this very important cleansing of the brain, where the brain actually sort of shrinks in size a bit to allow for this beautiful fluid to then kind of pulse through and then take out the accumulating toxins throughout the course of the day, just to build up the
Yeah.
almost, it's kind of a janitorial system that really, really needs to happen every single night. And it largely is occurring during deep sleep. And what we find is if that process is not able to happen with, countableness each night, then we start to have some buildups. And the reason it became a big talking point is that it appears to have connections with neurological breakdown. So, neurological difficulties like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, things that previously we might have said, well, maybe it's in our genes. There's not much we can
Right.
do about it. Just hope. No, it looks as if this whole kind of approach and theories and studies are hold true, then sleep is something you could do decades in advance of any overt severe symptoms. But even on the short term, so while maybe you're not dealing with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia at the moment,
Yet.
but on right, thank you. On the short term, then we can be experiencing some of those things where if the brain is not being able to have this cleansing process, kind of this like brain fog, cognition off, little memory off, memory retrieval, a number of things
Right.
that we want to support. So that's just one piece, and that's on the first half of the night. Then, not to mention that commonly one of the things that can really get messed with too with alcohol is REM, which is on our second half of our night. That's when the body is often starting to naturally improve, like go up in its bodily temperature. And we kind of want to support that to a certain extent because that's helping, if you think about it, with deep sleep, it's helping the body get into this really cooler state. The delta activity of the brain is really slow and
Yeah.
calm. Our heart rate's low, so you wouldn't really want to go from that state to like, okay, now go do all your work that you got to do for the day and all that. So instead, the
Hmm.
body's really intelligent, so it takes us through that. Then it moves us to REM, which is almost like you're watching this movie of whatever is going on in your dreams and all these things to process, things for the day or traumas or stressors or whatever. And we could think of REM as like inner therapist
Hmm.
to a certain piece, right? So for emotional regulation and to process some of these stressors, especially if you're maybe getting off of alcohol or weaning or whatever you might be doing, some things can come up. So REM is something we want to support to
Yeah.
process that. But if it's being fragmented all throughout the course of the night because of alcohol,
Hmm.
then you're not properly getting that REM. And for some people, once you wake up, many people are just up, for the rest
Yep.
of the night. And I've been there too. And so now you're cutting into your sleep duration and all that to say that you're not getting that ability to recover both physically and mentally, emotionally. And we want to support that to powerfully break through this dependency on alcohol, because then we get into this vicious cycle where we feel like we need more because now we can't emotionally regulate, so we feel like we need something external.
Yeah, I mean, what keeps going through my brain is that we know alcohol crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's one of
Yes.
the things that it touches every cell in the body. Um, what how does that affect our sleep? Is that affecting directly the lymphatic drainage? The fact that it can
Yes.
cross the barrier?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a few things about that. So for anything that's going to be impacting deep sleep on the front half, that rich delta sleep is impacting our ability to even access some of those deeper levels of sleep, because that can be more stimulating. It can have more of this effect of the body is trying to survive this kind of, dare I say, poison that
Toxin.
we just
Yeah.
put in, toxin, certainly, right? And this ethanol and processing all of this. So it's now you're giving it extra homework. And I
Mm.
often talk about one extra piece of homework that we don't necessarily want to be giving to it. And many of us are totally unbeknownst to us, even if we feel like we're really healthy or what have you, is eating later. And so then suddenly you're turning on the digestive clocks. And so you're having to then give this extra homework. So you're kind of splicing the activity and energy load of the body to now be dealing with digestion
Mm.
down here, which is lots of blood flow and all that, as opposed to focusing on certainly the brain health aspect of things, but also the overall bodily, so say you're working out, say, a sober fit chick.
Right.
So the working out piece, all the benefits that you want to support there. And this goes for both men and women too. And this is often a good one for men for testosterone because one of the best ways to hit at testosterone is to drink repeatedly and not get proper sleep, and not get that, especially that deep sleep on the front half and growth hormone. So all of those things are going to be impacted, but that includes that brain health, that inflammation factor. So it's just this whole
Yeah.
cascading effect of problems when we are bringing that drinking aspect in. So I guess what I would say is I would put in for people if they one of the things that I've seen is if they start adding in wearables, if they haven't been doing it previously, there's a
Yeah.
couple things I would want them to do with alcohol in particular. Yes, exactly. Which one do you have? Sorry,
I have the Garmin
the
Phoenix.
Garmin.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the Pro.
Sure. And
Let me
actually, in
just
the world of
interject there for
yeah,
people.
please,
What I
please.
love is the wearable technology takes out the emotion, the
Yes.
attachment to this thing that has become
Yeah.
a friend, a comforter, a sleep aid, a de-stressor, but this gives you tangible data without emotion that you can truly see what it's doing to your heart rate and all the other systems that you mentioned. So I
Yes.
love that you're recommending people to get the wearable tech. Now there's everything from Apple to Aura to Whoop to do you have certain recommendations?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And actually, late breaking news in the world of this because there's actually been a lot of cool things happening in wearable tech, even just the past couple of weeks.
Hmm.
So one, I would say, uh, Whoop just released their new Whoop 5. And so that has a lot of new features, not only just an ease of use. So now the battery life lasts like 14 days, but also more high fidelity information. So it's pulling more routinely, including blood pressure is now an option to be able to kind of track that, and
Hmm.
medical grade offerings on the Whoop as well, which is a big news. So they've got a lot that's available there. The other news is that Aura has now partnered up with Dexcom, and a huge aspect of getting great sleep is having stable blood
Blood
sugar
sugar.
regulation. And of course, as we know, alcohol is going to do a whole number on
On
your
the blood
metabolism
sugar.
and
Yeah.
on your blood sugar. So even though it can be so confusing, some people will get their CGM and be like, well, I guess it helps because my blood sugar goes
Yes.
down. But yeah, exactly.
I've
Don't think that, and which I know is confusing because I get it. And yet, while it on the short term can have a little bit of drop, just wait. There's all kinds of volatility to come.
hit you on the
Uh,
backside. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So Aura Ring and Dexcom have now kind of joined forces. So now you can be tracking your sleep paired with Dexcom, and they also now have. This is all for the United States. They have something called Stilo. So that's a option that comes without a prescription. So you can get the CGM without a prescription for really affordably. So now you're tracking your blood sugar throughout the day and night. And then you can
Mhm.
start to overlay that data and see, oh man, at 3 a.m., when I was always waking up and just thought it was, because I had to go pee, which is a misnomer that I shouldn't say always a misnomer. Sometimes you really just are drinking a lot close to
Yeah.
bed. But commonly people think that the waking up to go pee is because of the pee, but it's not always real. It's actually a source point. There's other roots to at play, like alcohol, but
Yes.
also blood sugar, and many times a whole puzzle of things. So that's the Oura Ring, and paired with the Dexcom now can help us illuminate. Oh
Mm.
wow, I have a real blood sugar problem, and that's part of what I need to heal to support the sleep. And they're bidirectional too. So getting great sleep is going to help with that blood sugar.
Yeah, and the
So
cool thing is you help people interpret this stuff too, right? I saw that
100%.
you because even though you have this on your wrist and you have these numbers, sometimes we
Yeah,
don't know what that really means. And so
totally.
everybody, Molly is full of information, as you can tell. I mean, it's amazing how important sleep is. But I just want
Yes.
to throw that in there that they can talk to you about, well, what does all
Well,
this data mean?
thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because really, truly is my mission on the planet to help support people in navigating this area because it can feel disempowering,
Hmm.
frustrating, sometimes, scary if you're dealing with sleep anxiety or just like something that's not it's overwhelming or confusing. So there's absolutely ways that we can unpack this. So we do help people with these audits where we go through,
Audit.
especially, yep, Aura Ring audits and Whoop audits are some of our most popular offerings. But to your point, there's other wearables as well. So, of course, the Garmin, Apple is really exciting too. And I'm just waiting for them to just have like a mic drop moment of,
Yeah,
like
they
the
need a little bit
ultimate.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it's taking so long,
Yeah.
but one thing that they did just kind of roll out recently is this ability to flag for potential sleep apnea, which is huge, huge, huge.
Yes.
Because I mean, there's so many people. I guarantee you a huge portion, I mean, just numbers wise, of your listeners are going to be dealing with sleep apnea that they don't even know about. So I'm a big stan that everyone gets tested, not
Yeah.
just once, but multiple times for sleep disorders. There's over 100 sleep wake disorders, and you can get tested for about $100
Yeah.
nowadays. So, we have on our store different companies that, they're just a ring and you can
Mm.
easily Just go to
Okay.
bed, put this ring on, and be done. And then if you want to have more nights of data, you can pay a little bit more if you want additional. But at bare minimum, $100 or so in the United States.
Yeah,
So
I
these
wanna
are all
say
just
I wanna just jump in there for a minute because
please.
I had sleep apnea when I was drinking. And
I'm not
now that I'm
surprised.
not drinking, I don't have it. Although I do tape my mouth. I love the Somnifix. I'm used to that now. I
Yes,
really can't sleep without it, but I had really developed sleep apnea, and it was
I believe it.
scary. That was
Yeah.
another reason why I stopped drinking, all these and that's what I love what you're doing. You're informing people. Sleep is important. Sleep is a skill. It's gonna be
Yeah.
another biomarker, almost more important, it sounds like, than blood pressure and cholesterol. But the
And
more
connected and
informed, yeah,
related.
all related. Yes.
Yep.
And the more informed they can be, they can make better choices. Same with alcohol. It's not about
Yeah.
judgment or guilt. It's about get informed so you can make choices for your longevity, your long
Yes.
term health, less disease state, brain health. I
Yes.
see so much parallel and connection between these two things that we do. I'm actually my
100%.
brain, and I've been wanting to do this, is to
Yeah.
have I run a 6 week group with people, and I would love
Sure.
it to have everybody have wearable technology. And for the
100%.
first few weeks, they can drink while we're getting mentally prepared. I don't have them change anything. I don't
Yeah.
encourage them to drink more, but I don't have them change
Yeah.
anything. And then the 6 weeks without alcohol, so they could literally see the numbers. I think that would be really powerful information for people.
100%. A couple things that I would say about that. One, I have had people say to me, "Oh yeah, I track and it's not that bad when I drink." So, but I always have them go in deeper and we almost always uncover the things that they're missing. So what I want to explain about
Mm,
that is sometimes depending on the tracker and the algorithm, then they might put out a score based on certain markers and certain weighted aspects of sleep that they might bring in. Because for some people, what we'll find is that they fall asleep and they're kind of, like you said, sedated. They're just kind of
mhm.
knocked out. And so some of these will give you a decent score because they say, well, you were asleep. And for some people, that's longer than they would have been in other states of
Yeah.
however they might be running their lives. So it can, at first glance, look like it is not bad. But if we go in deeper, we can almost always uncover those other pieces that we spoke about. Meaning more of those nervous system indicators. So then we'll see often a huge rise up, often an order of magnitude of around 10 beats per minute with the people that we work with in our groups on average when they have a drink or two in the evening,
Mhm.
that they can expect to see that go up with their heart rate and a drop down, a measurable drop down from their baseline in heart rate variability, and certainly a rise up in respiratory rate, different amounts for different people. And then certainly with sleep apnea, one of the surefire ways to either create sleep apnea where there was no sleep apnea or in wildly amp up the severity of sleep apnea is to throw in alcohol.
Yeah.
And then often when people are drinking, they might be eating too, and then you get a double whammy.
Yep.
So all of that is very clear. Now, if anyone has dealt with this, because I love that you're sharing about your sleep apnea, I would also encourage people to fairly routinely, especially women, to fairly routinely, even after they stop drinking, to still just check in. And again, it's like $100. So
Yeah, I'm gonna do
just
it.
right?
Yeah,
Yes, just why
totally.
not?
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things that we do see, especially for women, and this is a big, we want to sound the alarm, is that while before the age of around 40, we are a little bit less likely to be diagnosed with sleep apnea than men.
Mhm.
Things drastically start shifting, right? As we enter into perimenopause and then menopause and postmenopause, then we start to see becoming more one-to-one with our instances of having sleep apnea. So I've had women that, they come in, whatever, they're 46 or something, and they said, yeah, a few years ago I was tested, I didn't have sleep apnea. Then we test them now, and they've developed sleep apnea. And to your point, alcohol is just going to flare it up,
Yeah.
but there still might be pieces of that that's at play. And the only thing I would call out about the mouth tape too is because mouth tape can be wonderful. Like I use mouth
Mhm.
tape every night, and to read "Breathe" by James Nestor if people want to learn more, or if they want more of a heady academic side. Jaws has a lot of kind of academic approach, but just huge. However, if you are dealing with undiagnosed or untreated sleep apnea, there is an instance where that can make it worse.
I can see
So
that.
that's just an important little call out too, if anyone, because some people will say, well, I snore, my partner snores, but we throw in the mouth tape and now it's like better. But unfortunately, that might be causing some other things for some people. But if they're not dealing with that, absolutely, please investigate that because we want to prioritize nasal breathing.
Yeah, that is wow, you have so much information. I could talk to you for, like, 2 hours, but I
Oh my
think
gosh, I know. We
I
gotta
have to have
hang.
a
Come on
part
over to
2.
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love
Yes.
to. So if you could give one piece, and I know that sounds very difficult, of
Yes.
information or advice or guidance to people who, are taking a break from alcohol,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit, what could they do to improve their sleep, around, like, less blue light? I talk to people about less scrolling before you get into bed, less blue
Yes.
light. There's even red light that you can sleep with. Maybe just some quick
Yes.
things there that you could
Yes,
throw
yes,
in.
please. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing us to that.
Mm,
Okay, so I would say there are two anchor habits that we have everyone begin with no matter what. And this also will certainly apply for the average person, especially as they might be embarking on kind of just a little time of uncertainty with the alcohol might have been
yeah,
a coping mechanism or tool for you are doing wonderful work to help people, unpack all that. But either way you cut it, it's kind of likely new or
mhm,
different. And so when we go into those periods of time, we might expect that there's going to likely be some, probably for some people, rough nights or what have you. So when rough nights occur, often what we see is compensation. And that was one of the things that I did when I was struggling with my sleep was I would have this horrible nights, barely any sleep. And so then I would be grasping to try to get sleep wherever I could. I would sleep in longer. I would then try to take these longer naps. I might take more, have stimulants. I might then, a very common one is, well, I'm going to go to bed so early tonight because I am exhausted.
make up for
Uh,
it. Yeah,
make up for it. And we think that that is all like responsible and taking care of ourselves. And it, at first glance, seems like it.
yeah.
And yet it can oddly kind of backfire because then it can throw off our circadian rhythm. All these inner clocks that are in virtually every cell and organ in our body now start to be
Hmm,
confused on what time it is, what to be doing when. So instead, we want to create this well oiled machine, especially when we're going into times of uncertainty. So the first thing to do with that anchor habit is to choose a consistent wake up time. And I say that intentionally over the bedtime. And that's not to say that we don't do the exact same thing where we support like winding down in the evening. And absolutely to your point with red light, I would avoid red light therapies like in the eyes
mhm.
late at night and that's been a little bit of a confusing one because many times we'll see biohackers with these huge red light
Yeah,
panels before bed, but those can be really excitatory and bright. You can test them with apps like my circadian app, and then you'll see the lux readout, and often they can be like 2000 lux or so it's very bright. And so any light is activating if very bright, so we want to minimize that. But red light, just like a red light bulb that's not therapeutic,
mhm.
is wonderful because then that's not going to be impacting our melatonin production. And you want to think about mimicking fire. So
Yeah,
fire is what we evolved around. So kind of amber hues, red hues are really helpful. So candles could be another one if you want to get old school. Himalayan salt lamps, the red light, as we discussed, all of that to help support kind of that winding down, but then remove the pressure for yourself of falling asleep at a specific time.
mhm.
Just set the scene for that and then just practice resting and relaxing and all of that. And then over time, sleep will come at a specific time as you maintain that wake up time. But you might have some rough nights or what have you. So instead of throwing that off, maintain that, but 7 days a week, because often people will try to cope with it on the weekends and sleep it.
Right.
And right. And then the second anchor habit to pair with that is that, say you choose whatever 7 a.m. is your wake up time. Then we want to pair bright light exposure, so-called sunlight anchoring. This was coined by Dan Party out of Stanford. So you want to get that sunlight anchoring process by going outside, getting bright light in your eyes and on your skin. That's partly why I'm talking to you outside with the wind blowing,
Yeah, it's so
because
nice.
I'm really committed to setting up my life as much as I possibly can to get exposure to that light where we where it can be possible. And I, lived in the Northeast in a northern
Yep.
latitude location. So the more north we are, then we want to be even more aware of this because there can be more of a tendency to go indoors. And that's a whole other conversation because you can use cold therapy to kind of help with this, but we can talk about that another
Yeah.
time.
I have a
But
quick
so,
question though.
yeah.
Do those SAD lights help if you say you can't get outside? Would
Great
that help?
question. Yes, great question. Okay, so there's a few different types of the SAD, the SAD, so the SAD lights or seasonal affective disorder lights. They can be helpful. Now, what I would say is, especially in the northern latitude locations, we really push for people to get a particular type of light, if possible, that can help produce vitamin D.
Hmm.
And it's, the fact that you can get vitamin D from a lamp is pretty crazy for the average person. So one is called a Spurdy lamp. And that one, often if you have anything going on from a skin disorder perspective, sometimes it can be covered under insurance. So like eczema, psoriasis, that sort of thing. And then you can get that. And or there's one called a company called Chroma D. And one of the things, or Chroma, and then their product is Chroma D. So that one will support vitamin D production, and it's cut with red light, which I like because instead of in nature, we would never be exposed to just one wavelength of
Hmm.
light. We would have this full spectrum kind of rainbow effect.
Makes
So
sense.
that's what we're trying to mimic as much as possible. So that would be one that I would suggest. Um, and I would still say if, anything you can do to set up your lifestyle to still even get a few minutes to get outside to get that full light source, that would be great. Now, if you are getting those sad lamps, if you say, listen, I broke my legs, I can't go out, something, whatever. And hopefully it's a really good reason why you can't go out. But if you, for a short period of time, can't go out, yes, you could get some of those lights. But my concern is, can you split that at least with some red light therapy, which you had touched on, which can be so valuable, and kind of cut that so that there's still a bit of a healing process of not having all of that bright blue light, which can be cortisol inducing.
Cortisol.
And so some people like that because now they feel, oh, I'm excited. It's like natural coffee. But most of us don't need this huge surge of cortisol either. So we're trying to favor the really beautiful healing aspects of morning sunlight, which are very rich in red
Hmm.
light. So if you can mimic some of that, it's always going to go to nature as our guide.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Your wealth of knowledge is incredible and the way you can articulate this. So I hope everybody will go follow Molly, get her newsletter because it's in there. And you often recommend these type of tools and tactics in your newsletter. So if anybody's trying to take notes right now, just know that you can get her newsletter. I always like
Yes.
to ask Molly, people, what do you do in your life since you're no longer drinking to be sober fit? What do you do in your lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a few things. One, I would say one of the things we talk about with sleep as a skill is kind of sleep leadership, if you will, and the idea that because some people will struggle in the beginning when they start, really reining in their sleep. One of the things that they'll see is they'll start to be less drawn to some of the activities that maybe they used to be drawn to, but then they don't want to be isolated because social connection is huge for our
Hmm.
well-being and for our sleep. We have a number of podcast episodes about loneliness and its impact on our well-being and sleep and what have you. So we still want to feel connected. So one of the things that we talk about is kind of sleep leadership. How can we take control of our calendar to still have those connections? So maybe it looks like my husband will host a poker night, or
Yeah.
I'm setting up these book club kind of meetups or a brunch or just different things that can help you design. So instead of being at the effect of your, kind of preconceived notions of, well, if I go out, everyone's always drinking, it's always late, and it's da 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 da.
Yep.
And one of the cool things, and I get it, like that was kind of my whole racket
Me
in the
too.
past too,
Yeah.
right? Yes, exactly. And then, but you start to see if you are powerful in your commitment and
Yes.
leading an empowered life, it's wild because then suddenly people just will follow suit with whatever you do. So if you say the dinner is at 5:30 p.m., the dinner's at 5:30 p.m. and there's no drinking and you're eating early and you're sleeping great and everyone just kind of goes along with it. It's a
Yeah.
wild thing and you can be that leader. And that's one of the cool things that I found in the people that I'm surrounding with here in Austin is just it's no longer it's I don't we don't even talk about it. Like no one
Right.
really drinks in our group.
Right.
There's in our people, not group, but in the people that we run around with. And that's one of the things that I also think is exciting is like people like yourself that are getting this information out. It just feels like it's starting to reverberate and
Yes.
it's becoming like a clear thing. And then just about every person we're talking to is tracking in some way, shape, or form. They know what it's doing, so it's only a matter of time before everyone kind of just follows suit.
Yeah, and you really live that being a sleep leader because I heard on another podcast that you said when people come to stay at your house, if they're lucky enough to be a guest, they often tell you they have the best night's sleep ever. You must set it all up with Himalayan salt lamps and early
Yeah,
bedtime and great meal and conversation. And so I love how you
hopefully it's not
really
because we're boring them to death or
it
something, but yeah, well,
doesn't
it's
sound like
definitely
it
the
at all.
environment is gonna be pulling for circadian alignment. I'm excited actually. This week we're getting a delivery from a new hyperbaric chamber, which I'm doing some new content around how that could be
Ooh,
supportive of sleep. A new sauna is coming because we just moved into this new place.
right.
So but how can we have some of those be like our state changers? Because I often refer to alcohol as we're going to because we want to change our state and
Right.
we don't like where we're at now, so we want to change our state. So can we have some healthier state changers? So can we all go sit in a sauna together? Can we do a hyperbaric? Can we go for a walk? Can we just
You're
other
speaking my
ways,
language because that's what
right?
help people see. You can't just remove alcohol and not
Yes.
replace it with another state changer. And so being
Well said.
curious about what works for you and willing to
Yes.
find out what's in your toolbox. So your sleep toolbox, your alcohol-free toolbox to downregulate your central nervous system. So I love everything you're saying. I could continue, as I said, to talk to you forever,
Yes.
but
Same.
I want to say thank you so much for breaking down the science, and I hope people will follow you to find out more and for calling out the myths. I think it's so
Mhm.
important to have expertise like you, really just giving people the information to make informed choices. So, for anybody
Uh,
who's rebuilding their sleep while taking a break or completely removing alcohol, your insight is a game changer. And sleep really is a skill and one worth mastering. And if you want to learn how to master it, please look up Mollie Eastman. Thank you, Mollie, for
uh,
being here.
Thank you. I so appreciate it.